Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're going to be looking at 11 amazing new games coming to the Switch in the month of August 2018. Why 11? Well, I had 10 and then I added well, no, I didn't add another one. My colleague insisted. Of course, do bear in mind that this isn't all the games that are coming out in this month, and there may even be even better games coming out than the ones that are on this list, but these are all the ones that have been announced so far, and the cream of the ones announced so far. Good. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Okay, so coming up on the 2nd of August, we have got Picross S2. It's Picross. There's admittedly not an awful lot to say about this game, but you know, it's Picross, and it's good Picross. You know, at the end of the day, it's just Picross. But that's not a bad thing, is it? I mean, Picross is fantastic. If you've played a Picross game, you know exactly what I'm saying, and if I say Picross one more time, I might actually get annoyed. It's never going to set the world on fire, but it looks well refined. It looks like it's just a good example of a Picross game. You know, what are you complaining about? Next game. On the very same day, the 2nd of August, we've got Iconoclasts, which is a Metroidvania game, if you know what I mean. It's got this beautiful pixel art style, but with loads of really detailed animation and not, you know, sort of really stiff and stuff like that. So it's got this beautiful flow to it, loads of really great animation techniques thrown in there as well, and the gameplay looks fantastic as well. It's sort of very puzzle-orientated rather than being more sort of Metroidy based, which is more sort of action, combat, and platforming, whilst this is a little bit more, you know, sort of puzzle-orientated. I think there's still a fair amount of platforming, but there's more puzzles in every room than you get in a standard Metroidvania. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big old sucker for that genre, so that's probably part of the reason why it's on this list. Also, it's just lovely. Also on the 2nd of August, we have got Salt and Sanctuary. And if you've played Dark Souls and you ever thought, I like this, but there's too many dimensions, and this might be the game for you. Yeah, it's very similar in many regards. I mean, I think it would be unfair to say that it's copying Dark Souls, but I think there's some very heavy influence in there. It's a Souls-like, as some people are calling it, which I think is a rubbish name. You go around fighting enemies in this sort of unusual and sort of decrepit world that you really don't know anything about. You're fighting enemies, it's hard as nothing. That doesn't make any sense. I meant to say it's hard as... It's hard. It's been available on other platforms for a while, but it's coming to Switch now, and in my eyes, that's a good thing, because I like the Switch. You'll be surprised to hear. Finally, moving on to a different date, on the 7th of August, we have got Overcooked 2. There's an exclamation mark in there somewhere as well. If you've played Overcooked, then it's just like Overcooked, but as sequel, so, you know, sort of elaborating on loads of other things. If you haven't played Overcooked, it's basically a sort of up to 4-player multiplayer experience, co-op, where you have to run around and make all these orders for these lovely dishes of food and send them out. But there's all sorts of things happening, you know, like there's a level in the original where there's like a ship swaying back and forth, and so the kitchen is actually moving every so often, and it just gets sillier from there. Sometimes you're on ice, and those levels can die. And as I said before, Overcooked 2 just seems to be elaborating on that further, and, you know, sort of trying to refine a few of the processes. Maybe it runs a little bit better on Switch. We don't know, because... well, I don't have it. I don't know about anyone else. But if it's anywhere near as good as the original, we're going to be in for a good old time. Especially after that patch that made it run well and not drop frames all the time. Talking about the original again, because that's all I know. Also on the 7th, we have got Dead Cells. Now, loads of people have been singing the praises of this game, and I have played it, albeit very briefly, and I can say... it's worth it. It's essentially a sort of a roguelike. I mean, you could argue it's a little bit Metroidvania-y, but with a much more focus on combat than something like Iconoclasts or Hollow Knight. You know, Hollow Knight does have the combat, but the combat really is the focus of Dead Cells. And they've done some really clever things to make it so beautifully refined and to make every single action feel just... mwah! Interesting little fact, the backgrounds and stuff are all 2D, but the characters and the like are actually 3D and super, like, scaled down so they appear to be pixel art. So that means that they can do the teeniest, tiniest adjustments to an animation, and it reflects it in-game properly, and it also means that the timing can be adjusted down to a modicum, which is a lot harder to do when you're doing individually drawn sprites. So very clever. There's some insider knowledge there. Also, the game is good. Then, on the 9th of August, have you ever been playing a Zelda game and you just thought, this is good, but I'd like to die more often? Well, that's the concept of Minute. Essentially, you're running around. It's a bit like a top-down Zelda game, as I alluded to, only it's in black and white, because why not? Some Zelda games were, like Link's Awakening, and that's one of the best. But if you hadn't already guessed, every single time a minute passes, your character dies, and you have to go back to your house and start all over again. But obviously, various things that you do have that sort of progress already saved. It's a bit, actually, the more I think about it, the more it's like Majora's Mask. That's pretty cool. So you're essentially exploring this world and going on this adventure 1 minute at a time. And it's an interesting idea. I'm really keen to give it a go myself. I don't know, whether it's going to be a particularly extensive experience as a result of that, but even so, definitely keep it on your radar if you're into that kind of Zelda shminimminima. On the very same day, yes, again on the 9th of August, we have also got Okami HD. Now, if you haven't heard of Okami, where have you been? Well, I mean, clearly at least you must know that it's a game worth making a remake of, because that's exactly what this is, if you hadn't guessed from the HD bit. It's not an easy one to describe. You basically run around as this wolf, and you've got to do things mainly involving, like, painting onto the landscape and painting over enemies. I say painting, it's more like ink, I think. More like ink, yeah. And it affects the world around you by, sort of restoring or destroying and things like that. And you can do all these sort of things, and I don't want to say too much and give anything away, but it's a really, really unique experience. And it's a little bit... It's a little bit dated in its design and presentation, but the presentation is arguably so solid and the art style is so good that it does sort of transcend that so that it does work in HD. There are a couple of sort of hangovers from the olden days, if you like, but even so, I think this is well worth a look in. Still on the 9th of August, we have got Megaton Rainfall. Now, I saw this, saw the icon and I thought, oh, that looks vaguely interesting, let's have a look at it. And oh my great goggly goodness, this is a superhero game where you actually feel like a superhero, like on a global scale. You are flying around, protecting the Earth from these nasty aliens that have come in, these big sort of metal machines trying to destroy the world, and you're there trying to protect the people, but of course, there's going to be collateral damage, and you have to try and avoid destroying buildings in your wake. And you can just, you can destroy a load of enemies in one city and then just fly up into the atmosphere, fly around the Earth, go to another city, they're all, I think, semi-procedurally generated, and defend that one as well. And you're just like this ethereal being. I haven't had a go at it yet, but I am so desperate to. It just looks like it's giving you so much influence and so much power that it becomes almost a problem in the game by, accidentally destroying buildings and killing innocent civilians. So, really interesting idea, really, really good presentation, and just overall, just the power, just the power to be able to just, go off into the sky, see the planet, and just dive down, and it feels like you're actually doing it. It just looks fantastic. Moving on finally to a different date, the 15th of August brings us State of Mind. I think the best way to describe this game would probably be a point-and-click adventure, but that's... I don't know, that sort of feels a little bit too old hat. It's not like that. It's not a retro-style game. It's more just sort of an exploratory adventure and sort of very heavily story-driven. It's not really got any sort of direct combat or anything like that. It's all about exploring and being a civilian, and that doesn't sound great, but from the looks of it, it looks absolutely amazing. The art style probably isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. I love it to pieces, but I understand, some people are probably going to look at it and think, ugh. But the whole idea is that there's this sort of duality between this dystopian future and this sort of artificial utopian world that people go into, and it's sort of, going between those two things, and it's just all about the narrative about that idea, and it takes place, obviously, in the future. Hence the Opian part of the words. I've not actually seen it running on Switch yet, and I'm a little bit worried with the amount of things like, visual effects and lighting and stuff like that it might not run brilliantly on Switch, but, if they're clever about it, I'm sure they can make it run just superbly, just might not look quite as shiny as what you're seeing at the moment, which actually is over that side. It's mirrored for me. Then on the 28th of August, we have got De Blob 2, and so it's kind of like bringing back an old game. The original De Blob was on the Wii. I think De Blob 2 wasn't on the Wii. I'll look. It was on the Wii. And the basic idea is that you run around as this blob, as the name suggests, and you've got to paint the town, and it's sort of, almost doesn't really go beyond that, but it does sort of elaborate and build upon it, that sort of core idea, and presents this really interesting game. And it's very much unlike anything you'd think. It's not quite Splatoon before you think it is, because there's no real sort of shooting involved. It's you running around doing things. It's totally different. I never got a chance to play the sequel. I played the original briefly. I think I got it on the Wii. Can I see it? Yeah, I think I can see it down there. So I'm really excited. Apparently the sequel was a big improvement on the original, and I really like the original, so what's not to like, eh? And then on the very same day, the 28th of December, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Oh my. I'm so pleased this is coming to Switch. I know it's not Monster Hunter World, and yes, I would love Monster Hunter World to be coming to the Switch as well, but in lieu of that, I'm more than happy with Generations Ultimate. I want to be able to play a Monster Hunter game on a Nintendo system with a controller that doesn't make my hands feel like they're going to fall off. By which I mean the 3DS. Probably partly my own fault for getting the new 3DS and not the new 3DS XL. But it's those colourful buttons, baby. It's been released in Japan for a while now under the name Monster Hunter Double Cross, but this is the English version, so you can play it and understand it at the same time, which is frankly marvellous. I was really tempted to pick up the Japanese version, but I'm really glad I held off, because now, as I said before, I can play and understand it, because even, you know, just sort of playing the demo and stuff like that, I just couldn't understand what was going on. You could say, Alex, you should learn Japanese then. But I don't have the patience for that. I just want the game to be in a language I understand. Is that too much to ask? According to Capcom, it isn't, because they've gone and done this. For me, I think Monster Hunter really is the highlight of the month, but what is your highlight? Is there a game that you're really looking forward to that's coming out this month that isn't on this list for some infuriating reason? Let us know down there in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you translate that subscribe button into Japanese so you can't understand what it says? Maybe something like this. And be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.